I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would destroy my own family. But then again, I never thought my own family would destroy me first. The morning everything began to unravel. I was standing in the marble foyer of the Blackwood estate, watching raindrops streak down the floor-to-ceiling windows like tears on an old woman's face. The house had been in our family for 3 generations, built by my grandfather with oil money and maintained by my father's relentless ambition in tech. Now it was supposed to be mine, the eldest daughter, the heir, the one who'd sacrificed everything for the family legacy. But the manila envelope in my trembling hands told a different story. "Miss Sarah, you've been standing there for 10 minutes, Maria said gently from behind me. Our housekeeper had been with us since I was 12, practically raising me while my parents built their empire. She was the only person in this house I still trusted. "Just thinking, Maria," I replied, though my voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. The DNA test results felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. 3 months of wondering, 3 months of subtle investigations, and now I had the truth that would tear our family apart at the seams. The front door slammed open, bringing with it the scent of expensive cologne and my younger brother David's boisterous laughter. At 28, he was everything I used to think I was: confident, charming, beloved by our parents. His designer suit was perfectly tailored, his dark hair styled with the casual precision that came naturally to him. "Sarah," David called out, arms spread wide as if he owned the world. "My brilliant big sister. Ready for tonight's board meeting? Dad says it's going to be historic." Historic. If only he knew. "Where's Mom?" I asked, tucking the envelope into my jacket pocket. "Conference call with the Tokyo investors." "You know how she gets during acquisition season," David said, his green eyes sparkling with the kind of joy I hadn't felt in months. "But hey, I have news that's going to blow your mind." My stomach clenched. "What kind of news?" "The partnership with Meridian Technologies just got approved." "Dad's naming me as the lead negotiator," David said, practically bouncing on his feet. "Can you believe it? Me, handling a $50 million deal." The words hit me like a physical blow. Meridian Technologies, the account I'd been developing for 2 years. The account that was supposed to secure my position as the next CEO. The account that would prove I was more than just the dutiful daughter who'd given up her dreams of becoming a documentary filmmaker to join the family business. That's my account, David," I said. David's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something that might have been guilt crossing his features. "Well, Dad thought it would be better if I took point on this one. You've been so busy with the quarterly reports and..." I created the entire proposal. "I built the relationship with their CEO," I said, my voice rising despite my attempts to control it. "I've been working 18-hour days for months." "Sarah, calm down. It's not personal. It's just business," David said, his tone turning patronizing, the way it always did when he thought I was being emotional. "Besides, Harrison specifically requested to work with me after we met at the country club." Harrison Fletcher, Meridian's CEO. The man I'd been courting professionally for 2 years, whose trust I'd carefully earned through dozens of presentations and late-night strategy sessions. The man who'd never met David until 3 weeks ago. "When did you meet Harrison Fletcher at the country club?" I asked slowly. David paused a fraction too long. "A few weeks ago. Just a casual encounter. Golf, you know how it is." But I did know how it was. I knew because I'd introduced David to Harrison myself, at a charity gala I'd organized specifically to strengthen our business relationship. I'd watched them shake hands, seen Harrison's impressed nod when I'd mentioned David's marketing background. What I hadn't seen was the private conversation they'd apparently had afterward. "I need some air," I said, pushing past him toward the door. "Sarah, wait," David called after me. But I was already outside, my heels clicking against the wet stone as I made my way to the garden. The October wind cut through my blazer, but I welcomed the cold. It felt cleaner than the suffocating atmosphere inside. My phone buzzed. A text from my assistant. "Your 3 p.m. with the investigator has been moved to 4 p.m. Hope you're ready for whatever he found." Whatever he found. 3 months ago, I'd hired Marcus Reed, a former FBI agent turned private investigator, for what I told myself was a simple background check on a potential business partner. But deep down, I'd known I was investigating my own family. The discrepancies had been small at first, missing funds from accounts I managed, contracts signed without my knowledge, investors who seemed to know things about our company that I didn't. Then came the discovery that changed everything. David wasn't just my younger brother. According to the DNA test I'd secretly arranged, he was my half-brother. Same mother, different father. A fact that our parents had apparently hidden from both of us for 28 years. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what it meant for the inheritance, for the company succession plan, for everything I'd been promised since I was old enough to understand what legacy meant. The Blackwood family fortune was built on a very specific legal structure. My grandfather's will had been crystal clear. The company and estate would pass to the firstborn legitimate heir of his bloodline. For 28 years, everyone believed that was me. But if David shared only my mother's DNA, I pulled out my phone and dialed Marcus Reed's number. Sarah, Marcus answered on the first ring. I was hoping you'd call. We need to talk. Did you find what I think you found? I asked. More than that. Much more. Can you meet me at the usual place in an hour? Marcus said. The usual place was a small coffee shop in downtown Seattle, far from the social circles where everyone knew the Blackwood name. I'd been meeting Marcus there for months, slowly uncovering the web of lies that had apparently defined my entire life. An hour later, I sat across from Marcus in a corner booth, watching him spread photographs and documents across the scarred wooden table. At 55, Marcus had the weathered face of someone who'd seen too much, but his eyes were sharp and kind. He'd become something like a father figure to me over these months, ironic considering what we'd discovered about my actual father. I'm going to show you something, and I need you to stay calm, Marcus said, his voice gentle but serious. He slid a photograph across the table. It showed my mother 29 years ago, her arm around a man I'd never seen before. She was visibly pregnant, glowing with the kind of happiness I rarely saw in her face anymore. That's David's biological father, Marcus said quietly. James Morrison. He was your mother's business partner in her first company, before she married your father. I stared at the photograph, my hands trembling. So David really isn't. Not your father's son, no. But Sarah, that's not the most important thing I found, Marcus said, leaning forward with a grave expression. The man in this photograph? James Morrison? He didn't just disappear from your mother's life. He was murdered. The coffee shop seemed to tilt around me. Murdered. 28 years ago. 3 months after David was born. The case was never solved, but I found some interesting connections, Marcus said, pulling out another document. Your father's company acquired Morrison's tech patents 6 months after his death. Those patents became the foundation of Blackwood Technology's first major breakthrough. My father, the man who'd raised me, who'd taught me about integrity and family loyalty, who'd promised me that everything he'd built would be mine someday. The man who might have killed his wife's lover and business partner, then built his empire on stolen technology. There's more, Marcus continued. Your mother knew. She's been receiving payments from a shell company for 28 years. Hush money. I felt like I was falling through space. Everything I'd believed about my family, about myself, about the company I devoted my life to, it was all built on murder and lies. Sarah, are you okay? Marcus asked. I wasn't okay. I might never be okay again. But I was angry, and anger was something I could use. What else do you have? I asked. Marcus smiled grimly. Evidence that your parents have been systematically cutting you out of the company while building David up as the heir. The Meridian deal? That wasn't coincidence. They've been grooming him to take over while keeping you busy with busy work. But the inheritance laws, I started. Don't matter if you're not around to claim them, Marcus said, leaning back and letting that sink in. Sarah, I think your parents are planning to force you out entirely. The board meeting tonight? I think it's a trap. I left the coffee shop with a messenger bag full of evidence and a heart full of rage. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained gray and threatening. I had 4 hours until the board meeting. 4 hours to decide whether to destroy my family or let them destroy me. But first, I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. I drove straight to Blackwood Technologies, the gleaming downtown tower that housed our corporate headquarters. For 15 years, I'd walked through these halls with pride, believing I was part of something meaningful. Now, every step felt like walking through a graveyard. Ms. Blackwood, my assistant Jennifer called as I passed her desk. Your mother wants to see you in her office before the board meeting. Of course she did. My mother's corner office occupied half of the 40th floor, with windows that looked out over Elliott Bay. Catherine Blackwood sat behind her mahogany desk like a queen on her throne, her silver hair perfectly styled, her navy suit impeccable. At 55, she was still beautiful in the cold, untouchable way that had made her a formidable businesswoman. Sarah, darling, sit down, my mother said, her smile warm and maternal, everything I'd always wanted from her and so rarely received. We need to talk about tonight. I took the chair across from her desk, the messenger bag heavy on my lap. About what, specifically? About your future with the company, my mother said, leaning forward with her hands folded. Your father and I have been talking, and we think it might be time for you to pursue your own interests. Remember how passionate you used to be about filmmaking? The suggestion hit like a slap. After 15 years of 60-hour weeks, after sacrificing my 20s and half of my 30s to build this company, she was suggesting I go play with cameras. I am pursuing my interests, Mom. This company is my life, I said. But is it really what you want? My mother asked, her tone so reasonable, so caring. You've seemed so unhappy lately. So tense. Maybe what you need is a fresh start. What I need, I said carefully, is to understand why the Meridian account was given to David when it was my project from the beginning. Something flickered in her eyes. Darling, you know how these things work. Harrison Fletcher specifically requested to work with David. We can't ignore client preferences. Even when those preferences were manufactured? I asked. I'm not sure what you mean, my mother said. I opened the messenger bag and pulled out one of Marcus's photographs. It showed David and Harrison Fletcher at the country club, but it wasn't from 3 weeks ago. The timestamp showed it was from 2 months ago, long before I'd introduced them at the charity gala. You set it up, I said, watching her face carefully. You arranged for David to meet Harrison, knowing I'd been developing that relationship for 2 years. My mother's composure cracked slightly. Sarah, you're being paranoid. Am I? Or am I finally seeing clearly for the first time in my life? I asked. I pulled out the DNA test results and placed them on her desk. Her face went white. Where did you get this? My mother asked. Does it matter? What matters is that I know the truth now. David isn't Dad's son. He's James Morrison's son, I said. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside, the afternoon sun had broken through the clouds, casting long shadows across the office floor. Your father doesn't know, my mother said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Doesn't know that David isn't his biological son? Or doesn't know that you've been receiving hush money for 28 years? I asked. Her face went from white to gray. How much do you know? I know that James Morrison was murdered 3 months after David was born. I know that Dad acquired his patents shortly afterward. I know that you've been covering it up ever since, I said, leaning forward. What I don't know is whether you helped plan it or whether you've just been too scared to tell the truth. My mother stood abruptly, walking to the window. Her reflection in the glass looked older than she was, haunted. You don't understand what it was like, my mother said. I was 26, pregnant, unmarried. Your father was already established. Already powerful. James was brilliant but reckless. He would have destroyed himself eventually. So you let Dad destroy him instead? I asked. I didn't let anything happen, my mother said, spinning around with her composure finally cracking completely. I was trying to survive, to build something for my children. For you. For me? You've spent my entire adult life pushing me aside, giving David opportunities that should have been mine, grooming him to take over a company built on blood money, I said. David is innocent in all of this, my mother said. David is about to inherit everything that should be mine, based on lies you've been telling for nearly 30 years, I replied. The door to the office opened, and my father walked in. Robert Blackwood was 60 years old but looked younger, his dark hair only lightly touched with silver, his tall frame still commanding. He'd always been larger than life to me. Brilliant, successful, everything I'd wanted to become. Sarah, my father said, his voice warm with the affection that had shaped my childhood. Your mother said you wanted to discuss the board meeting tonight. I looked at him, really looked at him, and tried to see a killer. All I saw was the man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd attended every school play, who'd promised me the world if I was willing to work for it. "Dad," I said carefully, "what do you know about James Morrison?" The change in his expression was subtle but unmistakable. His eyes went flat, calculating. "Why would you ask about him?" my father asked. "Because he was David's biological father. Because he was murdered 28 years ago. Because his death made you rich," I said. My father looked at my mother, who was standing frozen by the window. Something passed between them, a look that contained decades of shared secrets. "Sarah," my father said, his voice gentle but firm, "I think you've been under too much stress lately. Perhaps you should take some time off." "I'm not having a breakdown, Dad." "I have evidence," I said. "Evidence of what?" my father asked. I reached into the messenger bag again, but before I could pull anything out, the office door opened again. David walked in, still wearing that confident smile that now looked sinister to me. "Family meeting?" David said cheerfully. "Don't start without me." The four of us stood there in the golden afternoon light, and I realized this was the moment everything would change. I could walk away, accept their explanations and manipulations, let them ease me out of the company while David took my place. Or I could burn it all down. I pulled out the photographs, the bank records, the evidence of 28 years of lies. "David," I said, my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. "Did you know you're not Dad's biological son?" The silence that followed was deafening. David's smile faded, his face cycling through confusion, denial, and something that might have been relief. "What are you talking about?" David asked. "I'm talking about the fact that our mother had an affair with a man named James Morrison. I'm talking about the fact that he's your real father. I'm talking about the fact that he was murdered when you were 3 months old, and that his death funded the empire you're about to inherit," I said. David looked at our parents, his face pale. "Is this true?" "David," our mother started, but David held up a hand. "Is this true?" David said firmly. My father cleared his throat. "Son, there are things about our family history that are complicated." "Don't call me son," David said quietly. "Not if I'm not your son." The pain in his voice was real, and for a moment, I felt sorry for him. But then I remembered the Meridian deal, the systematic way they'd all worked to push me aside, the years of being told I was being groomed for leadership while they planned to give it all to him. "There's more," I said, pulling out the final document Marcus had given me. "Dad, would you like to tell David about the insurance policy you took out on my life last month? The one worth $10 million. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. David looked at our father with horror. "What insurance policy?" David asked. "It's standard procedure for key executives," my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Key executives who are about to be forced out of the company?" I asked. "Dad, did you really think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I'd just disappear quietly so David could take over without any legal complications?" My mother sank into her chair, her face buried in her hands. "Sarah, please. Your family." "Family?" I laughed, and the sound was bitter even to my own ears. "You've been planning to murder me." "That's not..." my father started. "Then what? An accident? Maybe I'd have an unfortunate car crash on my way home from the board meeting tonight? Or would it be a random mugging gone wrong?" I asked. David was staring at our father with an expression of growing disgust. "Please tell me she's wrong. Please tell me you weren't planning to hurt her." "No one was going to hurt anyone," my father said firmly. "Sarah, you're being dramatic." "Am I?" "Then why don't we call the board meeting early? Why don't we invite everyone up here right now and discuss the future of Blackwood Technologies in the open?" I said. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. "Sarah, stop," my mother said sharply. "Why? What are you afraid they'll learn?" I asked. My father moved toward me, and for the first time in my life, I was afraid of him. The man who'd been my hero, my role model, suddenly looked capable of anything. "Give me the phone, Sarah," my father demanded. "No," I said. "Give me the phone or you'll regret it," my father said. David stepped between us. "Dad, back off." "David, you don't understand the situation," my father said. "I understand that you've been lying to me my entire life. I understand that you apparently murdered my real father. And I understand that you're threatening my sister, David said, his voice shaking but his stance firm. "What I don't understand is how you became someone I don't recognize." My father's mask slipped completely then. The warmth, the paternal love, the man I'd adored. It all fell away, leaving someone cold and calculating. "Your real father," my father said to David, "was a weak man who would have destroyed everything he touched, including your mother." "I saved her from him." "By killing him?" David asked. "By doing what needed to be done," my father replied. The admission hung in the air like smoke from a fire. My mother was crying silently, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. David looked like he might be sick, and I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. Finally, the truth. "The board meeting is in 2 hours, I said quietly. "I'm going to tell them everything. About James Morrison, about the patents, about the insurance policy. About all of it." "Sarah," my father said, his voice taking on a threatening edge, "if you do that, you'll destroy everything. The company, our family, thousands of jobs. You already destroyed our family." "I'm just exposing what's left," I said. I turned toward the door, but my father grabbed my arm. His grip was tight enough to bruise. "Let go of me," I said. "Sarah, listen to me very carefully. If you walk out that door, if you go to that meeting, there will be consequences." "Serious consequences," my father said. "Are you threatening me?" I asked. "I'm telling you the facts. This company is bigger than any one person. There are people with a lot invested in keeping certain information private," my father said. I looked into his eyes and saw something that chilled me to the bone. This wasn't just about family secrets anymore. There were other players in this game, people with power and money and no qualms about eliminating problems. "Who else knows?" I asked. My father smiled, but it wasn't warm. "More people than you might think. Less people than you might hope." The door opened again, and Harrison Fletcher walked in. The CEO of Meridian Technologies, the man I'd been courting for 2 years, the man who'd supposedly requested to work with David instead of me. Except now I realized he'd never made that request at all. "Ms. Blackwood," Harrison said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I understand you've been asking some difficult questions." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Harrison Fletcher wasn't just a client. He was part of whatever conspiracy had been building around me. The Meridian deal wasn't just about business. It was about consolidating power and eliminating loose ends. "How long have you been working with my father?" I asked. "Long enough to know that you're a very intelligent woman." "Too intelligent for your own good, perhaps," Harrison replied. David was looking back and forth between all of us like he'd stumbled into a nightmare. "What is happening here?" "Your sister," Harrison said pleasantly, "has uncovered some information that could be problematic for a number of people. We were hoping to resolve this quietly." "By murdering me?" I asked. "Murder is such an ugly word." "Let's call it restructuring," Harrison said. I looked at my family, my mother still crying, David pale with shock, my father watching me with the cold calculation of a predator. And I realized that the board meeting tonight had never been about company business. It had been about getting me in one place, surrounded by people who wanted me gone. But I had one advantage they didn't know about. "Marcus Reed has copies of everything," I said calmly. "If anything happens to me, it all goes to the FBI, the SEC, and the Seattle Times." Harrison's smile faltered slightly. "Mr. Reed won't be a problem." The casual way he said it made my blood turn to ice. "What did you do?" "Nothing permanent." "Yet," Harrison said. I pulled out my phone and dialed Marcus's number. It went straight to voicemail. "You bastards," I said. "Sarah," my father said, "it doesn't have to be like this. We can work something out. A generous severance package. A recommendation for any position you want outside the tech industry." "You mean outside Seattle?" "Outside the country, probably," I said. "If that's what you prefer," my father said. I looked around the office one more time. At the family photos on my mother's desk, at the awards and accolades that represented years of my work, at the view of the city I'd grown up in. Everything I'd ever cared about, everyone I'd ever trusted, it was all poison now. "I have a counter-proposal," I said. Harrison raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "David gets nothing. The company goes to me, as originally planned. You withdraw from the Meridian deal and never contact my family again. And everyone in this room forgets that James Morrison ever existed, I said. And in exchange? Harrison asked. I don't destroy you all tonight, I said. My father laughed. Sarah, you're outnumbered. You have copies of some documents, but we have lawyers, connections, resources you can't imagine. What makes you think you can win this? I smiled, and for the first time in hours, it was genuine. Because I didn't just hire Marcus Reed. I hired 3 other investigators, 2 forensic accountants, and a journalist from the Wall Street Journal. Because I've been recording this entire conversation, I said, holding up my phone, which had been running a voice recording app since I walked into the office. And because the FBI has been very interested in the unusual number of suspicious deaths among tech executives in the Pacific Northwest over the past 30 years. The silence that followed was beautiful. Harrison Fletcher's face had gone ashen. My mother looked like she might faint. Even my father seemed shaken. You're bluffing, my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Would you like to test that theory? I asked. I walked to the door and paused with my hand on the handle. The board meeting is canceled. Meridian Technologies will receive a full refund of any payments they've made, along with a formal apology for wasting their time. David, you have 24 hours to decide whether you want to stay with the company under new management or pursue other opportunities. Mom, Dad, you have 24 hours to pack your things and leave Seattle permanently, I said. Sarah, my mother whispered, please. You should have thought about please before you helped cover up a murder for 28 years, I said. I opened the door, then looked back one last time. Oh, and Dad? The life insurance policy you took out on me? I'd cancel it if I were you. The optics are going to be terrible when this all comes out, I said. I walked out of the office and didn't look back. The board meeting that evening was indeed historic, though not in the way anyone had planned. I presented the evidence methodically, professionally, with the same attention to detail I'd brought to every presentation I'd ever given. By the time I finished, 3 board members had resigned, 2 others had called their lawyers, and Harrison Fletcher was nowhere to be found. The FBI arrived the next morning. David chose to stay with the company, and over the following months, we rebuilt Blackwood Technologies from the ground up. We returned the stolen patents to James Morrison's estate, established a foundation in his memory, and slowly earned back the trust we'd lost. It wasn't easy, but it was honest work for the first time in decades. My parents disappeared, though Marcus Reed, who turned out to be fine, just temporarily detained by some of Harrison's associates, tracked them to a non-extradition country in South America. They'd apparently been planning their exit strategy for years, just in case the truth ever came out. Harrison Fletcher was arrested at Seattle-Tacoma Airport trying to board a private jet to the Cayman Islands. His trial became a sensation, revealing a network of corruption that reached far beyond our family's secrets. David and I never became close exactly, but we learned to trust each other. The shared trauma of discovering our family's dark truth created a bond that was stronger than blood, built on the choice to do better than those who came before us. On quiet evenings, I sometimes think about the different paths my life could have taken. I could have walked away, taken their money, started over somewhere else. I could have pretended ignorance, let them ease me out while David inherited an empire built on murder. I could have been complicit in my own erasure. But I chose justice instead of peace, truth instead of comfort, and though it cost me the family I thought I had, it gave me something more valuable, the family we chose to become. The last time I saw my mother, she was being escorted from the courthouse in handcuffs, finally facing trial as an accessory to murder. She looked older than her years, broken by the weight of decades of secrets. As our eyes met across the crowded hallway, I felt a stab of something that might have been pity, but not regret. Never regret. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive, and some truths are too important to bury, no matter how much blood they spill in the light.